To begin our learning activity for today, we're talking about an exciting topic, the future of creative commerce in the Philippines. And how, of course, to support our economic leaders and industry champions, how to push creative industry forward, we're finally seeing real opportunities grow and this scale. Now, it's great to be part of this discussion that's shaping the next chapter of the Filipino creative economy. Now, this segment is powered by, of course, RFM Corporation, ICTSI, Ayala Corporation, and Globe Business. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Now let's call on our panelists. Chairman, Special Committee on Creative Industries, House of Representatives, the Honorable Christopher Toff, VP de Venecia. Good morning. Director 4, of course, from the Department of Trade and Industry, Bureau of Competitive Development, Engineer Lillian Salonga. None other than the President of Cultural Center of the Philippines, Ms. Kay Tinga. Last but definitely not the least, President of CCAP, Creative Content Creators Association of Philippines Incorporated, Ms. Marla Roche. Can you please give them a very big round of applause? Thank you for making it this morning. You may now, of course, be seated. Good morning, good morning. Thank you for taking the time. You're all incredible icons in your industries. You've all pushed innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship forward. And we're all eager to hear from all of you here today. But let's begin by looking at the big picture. How do you see the Philippine creative economy evolving in the next 3 to 5 years? Let's give a general picture in your vision. Toff, you gotta go ahead.
Sure. Rapidly, I hope. I mean, now that you have an enabling policy, the Creative Industry Law, RA 11904, with DTI at the helm of orchestrating a whole of government, hopefully a whole of society effort towards like advancing the sector. With greater awareness, we are 2 creative industry months in, and we're gonna have our 3rd this year. So constant information education campaign within government, so that they know how to support the creative industries. And even among the people, I remember I was with Joey like 2 years ago here at the Go Negosyo Summit also, and I was telling him, we lean into the creative industries naman. It's such a huge sector. And here we are having our first creative industry themed Go Negosyo Summit. So I think more and more people are becoming aware of the sector. And of course, with the dynamic Sec Chris Roque at the helm, of DTI, who's very supportive of creative industry since day one. Of course, President Bongbong Marcos, his first SONA pa lang, he mentioned creative industries na. Alam ni Kong Sandro to, mangiyak-ngiyak ako behind him when I heard it. And you really see government leaning in towards this sector. So hopefully, more vibrant, more level up creative industries.
Because there's a saying, right? Necessity is the mother of innovation. So there is a need for growth in this particular industry. But I want to see it from a DTI standpoint as well, ma'am. So you're seeing this rapid growth that you project in the next 3 to 5 years. Why do you think the Philippines is being positioned in this way, which leads into 2030? Because you've seen projections that lead us in 2030.
Yes, allow me first to greet all of you with our traditional malikhaing Pinoy greeting. Isang malikhaing araw po sa inyong lahat. And of course, the creative community that we have, we're very proud and honored to be here, part of this Go Negosyo Forum. Just to put it into context as I answer your question, I think it's important to recognize how our Philippines creative industry has been evolving. And in the last decades, it has changed dramatically the landscape of our social, cultural, as well as, of course, economic growth. So the Philippine creative industry has that foundation through the legislations, of course, as championed by Kong Tov in 2022. We see that the creative industry is very promising in the next 3 to 5 years, as we know that Filipinos are truly creative. And from the President's SONA 2020, 2024 paragraph says that Filipino creatives are truly world class, and that we know that we have, just like what Secretary mentioned, the ACEs that we have, of course, known worldwide. We are really positioning the Philippines as the Asia's creative hub by 2030. And this is incorporated in the newly formulated Philippine Creative Industry Development Plan.
That's great. Though. Can we please give a round of applause? 2030, Asia's creative hub, which is, if you think about it, we're less than half a decade away, which is rapidly approaching, of course. Now, speaking of creativity and culture, we have the president, of course, Cultural Center of the Philippines. I do want to go to you because you see this landscape and its continuous growth, which indicates how creative Filipinos are. How sustainable do you think this is? And what insights can you give seeing how Filipinos navigate being creative?
Thank you so much. Actually, if I could dovetail on the DTI, we're extremely happy that there is a recognition of the importance of the creative industry in the growth of our country, because, like you said, the economic gains are very tangible, because clearly the Filipinos are very talented and creative, go all over the world. The musicians, the artists, the artisans, they're all Filipinos. A lot, go anywhere and that's what you see. Why don't we bring them here? When we say we're creative, we don't even have to send them abroad. We could be the regional hub of creativity in the country. We're almost there. We have the talent. Now we just need more support, more administrative, more support so that this can really happen, because we see the talent. Now we need to provide the framework how we can grow this.
You're talking about growth and starting something and the continuous support. We have somebody here who supports content creators. Ms. Marlo, thank you so much for being here. On behalf of some of the content creators, thank you so much. It means a great deal to all of us. But we touched on some very important points today, which are, venturing forward, starting businesses, continuous growth. How difficult is it to start a business venture, whether you're an entrepreneur or a creative, and at this climate and at this point, is it actually sustainable?
Thank you so much for the question, and hello, everybody. I think there's a couple of things that has to be clear.
Okay.
When I talk about creative content, especially with CCAP, we talk about original content. So CCAP talks about animation, film, comics, books, characters, music. As we know, and a lot of people are creative. They present things, they do skits on, they write their own stories and things like that. Is it sustainable? Absolutely. Because we know 100% Hollywood itself creates its own content. And how long has Hollywood been, and how profitable has it been? And do we not all over the world watch movies, TV, animation from all that? So when I see the Philippines in 3 to 5 years, especially with its creative industries, I see us sitting here watching our first commercially, globally released Filipino animated film. I see released animated series that's on Disney Plus or other shows. I see books that are as popular as a lot of the bestsellers out there. Because in 3 to 5 years, especially with the kind of focus that the government, that private sector has been putting into the creative industries, especially in original content, we see and understand Filipinos are not here just to create for others. We're not just doing outsourcing, we're not just doing service, because Filipinos have our own stories to tell. I think everybody here, if we sit down with them, we know we have our stories to tell. I've been going around in various regions talking about original content. We do an IO roadshow, and all of them, we go from Siquijor to Tagbilaran, up there in Pangasinan, all the way, and we're talking to people, and each of them have a particular story that they want to tell. So I cannot imagine a world where in 3 to 5 years, especially with digitization, the fact that we wouldn't be able to share those stories and then profit from them commercially as well. So
But
that's
you raise
my
a very good point with stories. Sorry, I mean, it resonates with everybody. There is whether each story is unique, but it has a connecting point, a similar experience that everybody has in our country, whether it's cultural depth, whether it's growing, whether it's a certain part of the region. So with all of this, of course, I guess we have to understand the playing field where we're at, and which brings me to Kong Tof over here. There are certain laws in place, I'm sure, that tell us what will help creative industries and creative entrepreneurs in terms of the playing field we have. What insight can you give to this particular topic?
So I think we go back to the enabling law, which created this program of DTI, the Creative Industry Law. And there we institutionalize different types of support mechanisms that creatives can avail of, from digitalization support, education, scholarships, training, capacity building, from DepEd, CHED, and TESDA. It also requires that they work more closely with industry organizations like CCAP so that the skills that they are learning in the K-12 system will suffice insofar as being hireable when they graduate. Because sometimes there's really a disconnect, and creative firms have to spend an additional 20 to 30% retraining the workforce that they hire so that they're able to keep up with the demands of the business. Also, we're talking about creative industries here. So the skills are constantly evolving. Technology always disrupts the business models, the distribution modalities for a particular type of content. So you always have to be up to speed with what's happening in the world today. Of course, the law also requires for LGUs, local government units, to be more responsive to the needs of the creatives in the barangay, in the community. If you think about it, sometimes there's a wide ocean between the barangay creative and a national government agency like DTI. Like, how might you even access all the services of DTI? And so what the law does is it mandates that all the negosyo centers in all the LGUs, the municipal and city halls, should be repurposed so that they are more helpful towards creators and creative businesses when they want to register, when they want to access, let's say, design support from the Design Center of the Philippines, when they want to access marketing support from DTI, whether it's participation in the regional trade fairs or a national trade fair like the National Food Festival, for example, which DTI just launched, or Manila Fame, which is organized every year. So we're supposed to basically fine-tune and streamline the pipeline so that creatives are able to access support in different stages of their business, from financing all the way to export and marketing. But I think, going back to what Marla mentioned earlier, that she's part of CCAP and that she is wanting to champion more generation of intellectual property. Yes, we are a leader within ASEAN insofar as the export of creative services. We're a very service-oriented country, so even in the creative industry, we are premium insofar as animating the intellectual property of other creators from other territories. In fact, tama ba ako, Marla? We are the go-to because ang strength ng Filipino animator is that they're very good with facial expressions.
Very, very true. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, we're also a very emotional people. So it also translates to our skill sets, which also build on the comparative advantage of the Filipino animator as opposed to animators from other parts of ASEAN, right? But we also have to start investing in our own intellectual property. And so that's something that the law also champions. We have to encourage more creators to create. That's why you also have a Young Creatives Challenge within DTI. It gives grants to up to 1 million to creators to produce their content. Kasi, you know, you can have a good play, but how will you put up the play? Ang mahal-mahal ng venue at saka ng production budget, right? So I think that's all important. But I think to be competitive today, and that's your question, to operate in the creative industry in today's landscape, you need two things. One, you need innovation. Diba? You have to find new ways of solving problems and creating and generating ideas, products, whether goods and services, that will cater to the problem or to the need of the consumer. And usually technology is a way to innovate. But the other thing that Filipinos need to be reminded of is to be competitive, especially in a global creative economy. You have to be hyper-local. You have to look into your culture, into your heritage, and how might you move that forward through your creative content in today's age with all of the flair and the process and methodology with the savoir-faire of today. How can you move the heritage and culture into today? If you're able to do that, then your product and service becomes more competitive. And you're starting to see shifts in the global creative landscape. Like, back then, sa Marvel, di ba bihira yung African-American superhero, yung Asian superhero. Ngayon, si Black Panther, talagang number one, right? Tapos meron ka pang Shang-Chi. And then, I don't know, baka eventually may Filipino, like, Avenger na rin. Diba? So, meaning, nagda-diversify yung taste ng global creative economy. So tayo, kailangan natin makabuo ng content, ng creative service, ng creative idea na nakahango sa kung sino tayo bilang Pilipino. And that is a radical paradigm shift for our creators. Kasi colonized tayo thrice over. So meron talaga tayong colonial mentality. So there's always this expectation na para maging competitive, kailangan kong gumaya sa ginagawa ng iba. Pero kailangan mag-invest tayo sa kung sino tayo bilang Pilipino and then roll with that. So those are the two things you need to be competitive today. Innovation and hyper-localization.
But just to piggyback off what you said, there is power in originality. You see it a lot in a lot of streaming services now. I'm sure a lot of you have Netflix, Prime, they call it Max, HBO Max now, and all of the other streaming platforms as well. And Disney, of course, you see the rise of Filipino original content. Whether it's dubbed in English, whether it's dubbed in Filipino or a first native language, that's how an avenue that you can champion as well. But we're talking about now a couple of things. The global landscape, you talked about access and problems. But before you actually get to this playing field, you have to identify the problem first. And one of the problems, as we get, of course, to Lillian of the DTI, the global scale of things, right? I want to see it from DTI's standpoint. How do you try to bring this globally for Filipino creatives?
That's a beautiful question. I think given the foundation of the law, as already passed in 2022, the DTI developed the Philippine Creative Industry Development Plan that's now submitted to the Office of the President. with this, it really went through a lot of series of consultation, recognizing the problems. Just like any entrepreneur, of course, would have to start their business. In creatives, it's always exciting. As we know, Filipinos are really creative, innate in our identity, in our culture, in our songs, in the dress that we wear every day. These are really embedded in our everyday life. But we at the DTI try to formulate that plan that can really sum up in this five acronym as a strategic framework summarized as BEAMS. First, B is building the ecosystem. This will really help all those in the creative community and stakeholders to work together and be able to really harness this identity as Filipinos in being creative. In the next letter E is empowering workforce. For workforce, we're looking at really not just the capacity building aspect, but more on the entrepreneurial side. And that we can be able to turn these passions into profit, as you mentioned, and really be more professional in that aspect. I think we've heard starving artists in the past or how a guitarist, una pa raw tutunog yung tiyan bago yung tunog ng gitara. But what is more important is in these skills, may kabuhayan. Meron tayong employment at ngayon makita mo nga sa online content, mas maraming kinikita yung mga entrepreneurs na nasa digital space. Of course, the A is on accelerating innovation. Ito yung mga access natin sa technology and adoption. And the other one is M. It's always important in every entrepreneur. This is mobilizing financial support. I think the law was also very specific on how to build that voucher system, funding support, and even what the Secretary just mentioned in the website that we launched yesterday, we also made the Malikhaing Pinoy website be able to highlight Thrive. Kasi tatlo yung components and pillars. Of course, first on the Connect. That's why we want that registry to be populated. And of course, learning the skills and the academic aspects or institutions offering business schools on creativity. And what is important now is on mobilizing funding support. That's why we have SB Core also as part of that website and that even IPOFIL to be able to help in the original content registration that what was emphasized by Kong Top. And of course, last is seizing market opportunities. This is also very important to be able to really put them in the global scale as what you mentioned. We have many efforts. I think why DTI is the chairman of the Philippine Creative Industry Development Council is that it has the entrepreneurial lens to be able to help our creatives really put it in the next level. It's not just a gig or a hobby, but really something that can generate livelihood and income for our Filipinos.
That's beautifully put. But I do want to highlight something you said early on in your answer to everybody here. Parang paminsan kulang tayo ng kumpiyansa eh. We lack a little bit of the confidence. And it's definitely easier said than done. You know, to start anything on your own, it's very scary. Like, how can you jump from a stable job to being a creative entrepreneur? How can you start your own business? And it's easier said than done because, syempre nga ma'am, sinabi nyo, baka una pa tumunog ang tiyan kaysa yung gitara. So, but again, it's taking the leap into knowing how strong your passion and creativity is, which is why I want to go to Miss Kay over
Sorry,
here.
can I add something? So, yung father ng creative economy, si John Hawkins, he coined the term. He is a UK professor and he works closely with DTI actually, and we worked with him also in the law. May term siya eh, creative rapids. How do you unleash the creative rapids? And actually, it's synonymous to what you said, Vince. It's creative confidence. How do you get that creative confidence? It's when you have constant opportunity to create. Kaya importante yung creative hubs, which is one of the core programs of DTI. Kailangan may ecosystem wherein sometimes to be a creative, you have to focus on the creative side eh. you cannot handle both. Although, of course, familiarity with the business side will definitely be helpful because you have to market yourself, right? That's what Kay and I were talking about kanina. Pero, dapat may ecosystem that will support the creative. So, dapat meron kang business partner, siya yung mag-handle ng marketing, ng mga registration para creative, especially an artist, which is a subsector of a creative, can focus on being an artist. So to unleash the creative confidence, the creative rapids, you need creative ecosystems. And that's what the law endeavors to create.
No, but it's beautifully put because if you think about it, it always starts with the first step, which is having the environment, having people encourage you to pursue your idea because there's so many obstacles along the way. And I'm sure, Ms. Kay, you've seen it with encouraging people to follow their passions. And you've seen all of these obstacles. But as you've seen this entire landscape, how do you think we can encourage more creatives, more entrepreneurs to even just start pursuing their ideas from the ground up?
Actually, this is a very good question because we do have a lot of creatives, we do have a lot of artists, and now, as part of the government, I think it's incumbent upon us to provide them with a platform to be able to show, to be able to perform. So it's very important. I guess the short answer is to help them produce content that's creative, that's culturally relevant, that's commercially relevant, so you can attract wider audiences. Because for creatives, the audience is the market. And for them to have confidence, they have to have an audience. Playing or performing to an empty house does not make for a good performer. Because the truth is, what do they say about art? It's not a vacuum. You're not in a vacuum. The art process is not complete if there's no audience to react, to interact, to interpret, which is the same whether it's visual arts, whether it's you're a singer, you're a musician, you're a dancer, it's all the same. That's why that's important for us. Having said that, the long answer would be to develop audiences, we have to start from the very beginning, and that is education. At the CCP, we aim to push that. We're all over the country with arts education programs because that's the only way we can involve the young, we can involve people from all over the country, and we see that. The arts education, actually, it's not just for the youth. Just recently, we've started what we call Progetto Puccini. It's an opera program. It's a tiny, tiny program because we are not funded that well, but we are committed to pursue it. Part of it, we do a very abridged version of La Boheme. But before that, we have training. Training not just for the singers, but for the audiences. Sinasabihan namin, huwag naman kayo mahiya mag-clap. React, appreciate. Because that's very important for the performers. If I can just add, the CCP just brought the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra for a 9-day city tour in the United Kingdom. This was produced by IMG artists, so this was a commercial arrangement between CCP and IMG. So the performers, our orchestra performed a day after they arrived from Manila. So it was very hectic, 9 concerts in 11 days. I talked to them, I'm like, pagod na kayo, no? Paano kami papabagod? Ang audiences nagsa-standing ovation. Full house. Diba? That's what we need. And we can only do that if we develop audiences at a young age. But it's not too late. Even myself, I used to associate classical music with relaxing first thing in the morning or when I'm ready to sleep. But as I am involved with CCP and is constantly exposed to classical music, I realize when I'm on the treadmill, when I'm working out, pwede rin pala. So it's a continuous process for all of us.
But the process is beautiful. Like you say, you started from the ground up. Even if you start something so small, eventually it all, like your point, it all starts from somewhere. But you're taking that risk by just even putting that small class, and you never know. It might grow into something else. But speaking of growth, the growth comes from championing, direction, championing connection between these things. And Whether we like it or not, there is that term starving artist. And we kind of want to remove that starving from the word starving from that phrase and just say artist. From your perspective, how can you champion both culture and commerce? And yes, from your perspective, of course, because you work with a lot of artists. You basically start things from the ground up in terms of their creativity. The fear is always there. The fear is, I have the talent, how can I abridge it with the culture I want to express and actually bring it into commerce?
That's true. Like you said, one of the things we do is to provide platforms for talents. Like this month, this coming June, we have the Virgin Lab Fest, which is a competition for writers who want to mount a play. We were saying earlier, it's so expensive to mount a play. The venue, the actors, the technicals, but that's what we give you. If you're part of the 10 that we choose every year, we will do that for you. And I think that's such a gift for artists. Another thing that we're doing is we have tied up as well with SITEM. We are doing the Create Fair, which is tied with the Manila International Performing Arts Market. Why do we have to tie up with SITEM? Our training is performing. So we teach them how to perform better. And the other side is, how do you make a pitch? How do you do accounting? How do you price yourself? I'm sure you have the same issue. Do I just copy what the next guy is doing? Or do I just put a 10% over my cost? No, that's not how to do it. And this is important. And this we are bringing to different parts of the country because the talent is not just here. The talent is everywhere. And this year, we are holding the Manila International Performing Arts Festival, where SITEM will bring the markets. They will bring different performing arts centers, people who are looking for talents from all over the world, and we will help them pitch themselves to them.
But part of that pitch, of course, is showing people the number of hours that you put into the craft.
Exactly, correct. That's why it was important for us to bring the orchestra, because we have many, many talents. But orchestra is very particular in that you have to work together, and the amount of classical training. Usually, you talk to a member of the orchestra, they tell you, oh, I started very late with the piano. I started at 10 years old. That's considered late. So that's what we're dealing with. And to be able to bring them to a land that's very sophisticated, very exposed, and very mature, and be able to show them and to show themselves they are at par. And in some cases, in some reviews, which were absolutely glistening, they're like, we were shocked. They performed, classical music that everyone knows, which is scary. Because everyone knows Swan Lake, everyone knows Carmen, everyone knows Beethoven's Fifth. And they said, some of the reviewers said, we didn't realize we could hear it in a different way. And the Philippine Orchestra has shown us that.
But it also goes back to the previous topic that we had, you bridging your own culture and originality with things that exist. And if they see your talent, you can actually create originality and bring our personal culture and ideas to life. Speaking of bringing ideas to life, I gotta go to Marla for this one, of course. You're the head of the Animation Vertigo in Asia. Can you please give her a round of applause, please? That's motion capture field. That's not an avenue that many people have explored, especially here in the Philippines. Can you please tell us more about that? Because the people that we know who have done it and who've transitioned to physical on-screen acting are people like maybe Andy Serkis will be one of them, who a lot of you have seen as Gollum in the Lord of the Rings franchise. So can you please tell us more about this?
So I'm not sure if a lot of people might be familiar, but I'm sure you've seen the behind the scenes of like Avengers movies or Avatar, where they're wearing these suits that they're all markered up. Sometimes there's a green screen behind them. And then what motion capture is basically is taking whatever real motion that we're doing as a human being and then transposing that into a 3D animated world. It may be like Avatar, where it's all blue, or it may be something even realistic like Spider-Man or the Hulk or something. motion capture allows us to make real something that isn't real. For example, wala sa atin ditong may ogre. Like, so there's no ogres. There also is no speaking gorillas, like in Planet of the Apes. A lot of these things have to be created by humans, by hand, to be able to commit to it. I think one of my favorite videos that I saw behind the scenes was Benedict Cumberbatch when he was playing Smog, right? He was a dragon.
He was a dragon.
Right? Benedict Cumberbatch as a dragon. First of all, guapo si Benedict Cumberbatch. The dragon was not. Secondly, it's a dragon. It is scaly, it is snake-like. How can somebody's human face, how can somebody's human body transpose into something that is a dragon? So motion capture allows us to put the realism into the acting of the unreal character. So that's what we do. The cool thing about it, so Animation Vertigo Asia has actually been in the Philippines for over 15 years now. A lot of the games, marami sa mga games natin na nilalaro, I'm sure Call of Duty, Resident Evil, Mortal Kombat. A lot of people actually don't know that it's actually being done here. And that those motions and those animations were actually created here. There's also a few other movies, but I can't mention them because it's white glove, which is why original content is so important, so that we don't white glove anything. So that we can be proudly saying, yes, I did this in this movie. I think to piggyback on something that the government, I just realized as everyone was speaking here that I was actually one of the private sector here. I think there's a lot to be said when government sees the effort, energy, and time that we put into trying to push our stories out into market. At SEACUP, we believe in locally produced content consumed globally. And by consumed globally, hindi namin ibig sabihin, gusto namin yung ibang Pilipino sa ibang bansa pinapanood rin. Don't we also deserve to have our stories heard, watched, and appreciated by the whole global audience? Of course. And we cannot say anymore na iba-iba yung kultura. Iba yung kultura natin, iba yung kultura nila, baka hindi nila maintindihan. But then they understood Parasite, which is a completely different culture from the West, diba? How would we understand something like that? So, if anything, what we've seen is there is a transition. There's as much as we closed up during the pandemic, we opened up because globally there were no borders at that time. Stories were told and shared digitally. We were able to watch actors and film and animation, read books that were available elsewhere, and it was now available for all of us. And the opposite is true. Something that we create here is actually also able to transpose to those borders and communicate and advertise and market it properly will mean that we will get monetization. We will be able to get paid for that. In the Philippines, I think one of the biggest things, and I think Kong Toff mentioned this, was innovation. Innovation and technology is necessary in this field because without that, may iwan tayo. I hate to say this word in a creative summit, but AI is already going to take part in that creative process. So in that creative process where you have something that shortens time, that makes things more efficient, that a lot of other countries are going to be utilizing, we have to be at the forefront as well of utilizing, understanding, and developing that kind of tools so that we can actually leapfrog ahead. Unfortunately, right now, medyo naiiwan tayo ng konti, right? So we have to find the means to find that next step, and then even beyond that. Because we're looking at our neighbors, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, who's already doing a lot in service and original content. What we want to do is we're good at service and we're amazing at it. What we want to show off now is that we're also really very good at original content. And the technology and innovation that comes from the Philippines, its vision is also quite different. So that's what we want to emphasize and push.
But that's a great way to put all of that. I want to try to encapsulate a lot of that in a nutshell because it'll be very difficult for me, but I will do my best. There's a whole lot. Trust me, she's here. Ms. Marla's here. You can talk to her later on. But from multiple standpoints, whether it's starting your business, whether it's being a creative, whether it's pushing original content, it all goes back to the root of knowing where to begin and knowing that it even exists. Like, for instance, I'm sure a lot of people here didn't know that Smaug from The Hobbit is Benedict Cumberbatch. Nakahiga po siya. He's crawling like a lizard in some random studio with dots all over his body. And that is considered a form of art. And they don't know that there are a lot of artists who can do that. I'm sure a lot of Filipinos want to do that as well. But just to quickly touch on the content creator side of things, because we've touched on a lot of original content, but it also connects to being a content creator. From CCUP's standpoint, how can you help creative entrepreneurs, especially more on the content creator side, navigate this whole business landscape?
I think from what I've seen, right, from all over the world, I'm sure everybody here watches TikTok, Reels, and stuff, and all of those content creators that are showing up. I think what hits people is not just you're different, but that different is not just a gimmick. It's not just a trend. It's not just the ice water bucket. It's not just, something like that. If it's something that's authentic and natural and it's your story that you're going to tell, that's one thing. But what I encourage a lot of content creators do is that move ahead. One of the ways to do that is what Kong Tuff has mentioned. Look into what intellectual property is. What thing do you do? Can you copyright? Do you write your own scripts when you do a skit, for example? Could those scripts that you do, could those stories, those little real stories that you do, could it develop into a full play? Could it develop into a sitcom? Could it be an animated series? If you're a virtual influencer where you do have the motion capture suit and you're acting towards something and you created your own actor, is that actor copyrighted or trademarked so that no one else can have that character ever again? And then if that character is trademarked properly, you can monetize that through merch. Because Disney actually makes more money from its merchandising than anything else. So I encourage a lot of the content creators to make what you do solid. And by solid, I mean have it intellectually protected, IP protected, so that you can IP manage it. And when we talk about IP management just means the ability for us to monetize what we have, because we can tell people, hindi, talaga, akin yan, ito yung copyright ko, or ito yung trademark ko, I can prove akin to. Yes, you can license it. Yes, you can use that for your animation and pay me royalties for it. So if you create something, I encourage content creators to find ways to expand. How can you create what you've done into other aspects so that you can push your IP farther and actually lengthen the lifespan of your IP? So that's the challenge.
That's honestly great advice also, which this makes my job so easy talking to four of you on stage because I don't even need to look at this so much because as we wrap up, you just gave your part of the advice. I want to move down the line. Ms. Kay, what advice can you give to creative entrepreneurs that constantly go through this ever-evolving landscape?
Research, do your work, do your job well, because there are agencies, there are private corporations that are willing to help you. We talk about content creation, even the CCP, which is associated with the ballet, which is associated with orchestra. We also do our part. We are also producing our own animated shorts. We just recently launched Lola Bashang, which has already won awards. And we don't do it in-house. We give grants to students, we give grants to artists who want to do this. We also do surprise gaming. One of our games already have like over 1 million downloads. So look, don't be scared, try. I think that's the biggest advice we can give because we are here to support and we are here to grow. So it might sound like it's not something that DTI would do or the Congress would support, but if it's something that's artistic, maybe something that we're not even familiar with. There is room, especially now with the recognition of the importance of the creative industry. There's definitely a lot of options for young creatives out there.
Speaking of options, of course, DTI supports all of these options. So, from your standpoint, same question: what advice can you give to creative
I
entrepreneurs?
think as part of our parting words, we really want to encourage our entrepreneurs here or potential entrepreneurs in the creative industry to really seize this vast opportunity, and there's so much potential. That's the first P that I'd like to impart. The second is, aside from that potential, we know that in the Filipino creatives, there's so much passion that's innate and embedded in all of us to be able to translate this into profit and, of course, as a profession. And that's, I think, sums up all.
Passion, profit. As Rocky said earlier as well, I think we should end where we started. Kongtov, let's go.
Learn how to do business. Kasi at the end of the day, kung creative ka, you still have to sell yourself eh. You have to know how to peddle your services, diba? So, register your business, know how that whole thing works, kumuha kayo ng resibo. Kasi if you want to scale and grow, then you have to be able to provide receipts to your clients so that you can start working with multinationals who will probably look for those receipts. You can also use those receipts to help you in other areas of your business, such as, for example, kung mag-apply ka ng visa, diba? You need to be able to present your ITR. Diba? Kung mag-apply ka ng loan sa banko, although hopefully, eventually ma-activate na natin yung targeted loans for creatives sa DTI for Malikaing Pinoy, pero hindi pa siya active eh. Pero until such time, you have to access credit from financial institutions. And yeah, you do need these things, right? And siguro the other thing that I want to advise is join an organization. You know, it can be so overwhelming to be a creative in this day and age. Sometimes you don't know where to start. You don't know who to turn to. Baka, you know, if it's like a freelance gig, tapos tinakbuhan ka ng client, or they change the terms midway. I mean, I wish naging batas yung freelance bill ko, freelance protection bill, kaso, I mean, nabinbin siya sa Senado. So hopefully, the next Congress can act on it more urgently because you need to protect our creative freelancers who are the critical mass of the creative economy. But usually support groups are a way by which you're able to get advice on vital areas of what it means to be in the creative industries. I think you're meeting some of them later. Like I was messaging with Isa Calzado last week. I think she's gonna be here. They have an organization called Actor, which is a support group for actors in TV and film and theater. Theater has a support group also for producers. It's called Phil Stage. I'm a member of that because I'm also a theater producer. For actors, there's Theater Actors Guild. Of course, there's a CCAP for content creators. But actually, in almost every creative industry, there is a trade organization. Fashion, there's Philippine Fashion Coalition, Fashion Designers Council of the Philippines, fashion accessories makers, diba? For live events, there's the National Live Events Coalition. There are organizations. These organizations make representation for you as an individual creative. And when there are opportunities in Congress to talk about laws, policies that can affect your sector, we cannot invite 7 million freelancers to go to Congress and participate in a hearing. So who we will invite are the heads of these organizations like Actor, like CCAP, in crafting laws like the creative industry law. But I was talking to Direct Joey Reyes of the Film Development Council and Paulo Villaluna of the Film Academy of the Philippines and Isa Calzado, who's the head of Actor. Sabi ko, I think for the film industry, we've been lobbying for the abolition of amusement tax for years now, and it never gets anywhere because Congress cannot dictate on the autonomy of the local government, and amusement tax is a local government power. Why have we never thought of proposing VAT exemption for film? It's like, oo nga no, because film is taxed 3 times eh. VAT, amusement tax, and withholding tax. So that's why the business of film is so unsustainable today. Because if your budget is 10 million, you need to earn 30 million to break even. So it's not good business, right? At natatapyasan pa yun ng VAT. But if you want a VAT exemption, that requires an act of legislation. We need to file a bill to amend the National Internal Revenue Code. That's why if you want to participate in policy forums affecting your sector, whether you are in esports and you are wanting better welfare for esports players, more protection, whether you are a chef and your problem is, it's so hard to access ingredients in this country. I need this and this high-value crop, and yet our rice farmers are always at the brink or precipice of, collapse because, that's where poverty incidence is highest, and yet there's an entrepreneur who owns a restaurant who needs adlay or batuan, and not enough people are planting it. So, really, it's DTI orchestrating what needs to be done for the creative economy, but you as creatives, you need to have a voice and a say in the growth and the future of your industry. And the best way to get your voice heard is to join an organization and be active and hopefully engage with government. Whether Congress that creates the laws or government agencies like DTI and CCP that implements them. That's the only way that we can really get to the 2030 goal of being the #1 creative economy in the entire ASEAN region.
I think that should sum it all up. You are fighting, all 4 of you here are fighting for everybody, which means all they have to do is start. Please give them a round of applause, everybody, of course. Please stand up to our speakers. We want to have our traditional group photo and at the middle. Those of you may take out your phones as well. Our founder, of course, Sir Joey, come on stage for our photo op. Can you please give a big round of applause, Kong Tov, Ma'am Lillian, thank you so much, and Miss Kay, Miss Marla, and of course, Sir Joey, thank you so much.